Our second reading this morning comes from the First Covenant. It is Psalm 19. You've already heard it sung once. This time we will read it. You can find it in your Pew Bible on page 498. But I also invite you this morning, if you so choose, and you promise not to fall asleep, to close your eyes and listen. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In the heavens he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom from his wedding canopy, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and nothing is hid from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The decrees of the Lord are sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the drippings of the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned. In keeping them there is great reward. But who can detect their errors? Clear me from hidden faults. Keep back your servant also from the insolent. Do not let them have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. The word of the Lord. The end of summer always puts me in a sad kind of mood. I'm not really sure what it is, if it's the beginning of the school year or what, but it suddenly makes me realize that everyone is getting older, me included, and that there's not enough time to play or live in God's glory. And although school starts well before Labor Day nowadays, Labor Day still marks the unofficial end of summer for me. So that's part of the reason why my family chose to get away last weekend, to celebrate, to have a last hurrah of summer before the busyness of fall begins. We went to Glen Rose. I love Glen Rose. It has a very special place in my heart. And some of you know this story, but I'm going to tell it again anyway. When we moved here 8 years ago, I experienced city overload. That's the only way I know how to describe it. It seemed like everywhere I looked, the only thing I could see was concrete. Concrete buildings, concrete roads, concrete sidewalks, concrete walls around neighborhoods, even concrete trails through the woods. I needed to get away, and so about once a month for the entire first year that we lived here, I would pack the kids in the car and we would head out to Glen Rose. I loved the vast amount of open space that was there. I loved the excitement of the possibility that I might see a deer or a fox at any moment just crossing the street. I loved the way that the bluebonnets moved and swayed in a springtime breeze and looked like an ocean upon the land. I loved the way that my stomach hit the roof of my mouth and then sank to the tips of my toes as we went over the hills a little too fast in the car. I loved that I could stand on a rock at the creek bed and see out for miles without anything obstructing my view. But most of all, I loved the blanket of stars that appeared every night, covering almost every square inch of the sky. There's just something so magical about a night sky that allows you to see the manner in which it looks like the Milky Way really is poured out across the sky, that it's gushing forth with God's brilliance and causing us to wonder at the mystery of it all, causing us to consider size and scope and scale, direction, and connectedness since the beginning of our time on earth. It also brought back memories of my childhood to lay out there under the stars, and how we would lay out there almost every night of the entire summer and look at the stars. This tradition of stargazing began for me when I was probably a preteen. My parents coaxed my brothers and I outside to watch a meteor shower. Now, we didn't really want to because, well, it was hot. And we wanted to be inside where it was air conditioned, but they made us. So we went outside and we were lucky enough to see some of those meteors. And it changed our whole world. Seeing those meteors got us so excited that we invited our friends to come over the next night and to see what we had discovered. But the night after that, kids from the neighborhood that we knew but who weren't really our friends, well, they showed up too. And we all laid there together on my old, fluffy, pink and white checked comforter and oohed and awed at the stars for hours. And long after the few days that the meteor shower lasted, we continued to gather every night to watch the stars. Now, granted, those stargazing times eventually led to pickup games of kick the can and capture the flag and ghost in the graveyard. But the impetus for our gathering there was always the stars. It was the reason that we were together in the first place. That summer, that first summer of stargazing, was a summer of discovery. We could not speak about it in words, but I fully believe that what we were experiencing was the mystery of God. We were learning what it was like to be in awe of our Creator. The stars, simply by being stars, proclaimed God's handiwork. And noticing them made room for us to notice other things too. For instance, the fireflies, or lightning bugs as I like to call them. They were out by the hundreds, sensing our scrambled patterns of play, and we soon learned that if we paid attention to their patterns, that we could easily find our hiding friends in the dark. We learned all the calls of the frogs, because it took only once to be startled by a frog thinking you had found the best hiding place ever to know that you wouldn't hide there again. We learned to appreciate the gentle breeze on a hot summer August night. We were even able to give thanks for it. We learned that we could sense, to smell even, what it smelled like when there was a possibility of rain, and that it might ruin our weekend night of fun. If we hadn't noticed the stars, then all of that wonder, all of that glory and awe might have gone unnoticed. The stars proclaimed God's glory and marked our neighborhood gang of childhood stargazers by giving us a cluster of memories that knit our summers together in a way that none of us will ever forget. It's funny to me how sometimes, even when we're following the lectionary, the right reading seems to pop up at just the right time. That's how Psalm 19 was for me when I first read it a week and a half ago and realized it was one of our readings for today. It made me smile to read it. Reading it helped me get rid of some of the sadness that summer was ending. Reading it gave me permission to enjoy my last weekend of summer and soak in all of the ways that nature continues to proclaim God's glory in the world. It helped me finally say goodbye to summer 2015. It reminded me that frogs still croak, crickets still chirp, lightning bugs still exist. The stars still come out every night to blanket the sky, even if we can't see them. I learned that every once in a while you can still glimpse a rainbow in the sky. It doesn't even have to be raining. You just have to be paying attention. Clouds still have shapes that allow us to be as creative and as imaginative as we want to be, as long as we let them. Rain still has a smell, even if I forget what it smells like. So often we do forget to look, to notice, to wonder at the mystery of it all. We forget to play and marvel and live and rest in God's glory. And Psalm 19 reminded me. But it didn't just remind me of God's glory in creation. It reminded me about all of the ways in which we can experience God's glory. See, it's easy enough to pick it out in nature, especially on a weekend away from the city. But these feelings of awe and wonder and creativity and inspiration are not only found in nature. The psalmist reminded me that these feelings are available to us anytime. We don't have to leave the boundaries of our existence to experience them. See, the psalmist starts out with creation of nature as a subject, but at about verse 7, the psalmist switches focus from God's creation to God's laws without even missing a beat. When I first read the psalm, I had to do a double take because I was reading along picturing only the beautiful things. The stars in the heaven as a tent for the sun peeking out from the dark drapery of night to run a race across the sky, its face shining with joy like a bridegroom emerging from a honeymoon suite. And then I realized the psalmist had moved on, no longer singing about creation, but instead singing about the law of the Lord. Now, I almost didn't pick up on it because listen to how the psalmist describes the law. It is perfect. It revives the soul. It makes the wise simple. It rejoices the heart. It endures forever. It enlightens the eyes. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never quite thought of the law in that way. The psalmist speaks in the same ways about the creation of nature as he does about the creation of God's laws. And although I have been known to sit and daydream for hours watching clouds shift from a fluffy elephant rabbit on stilts to tall flowers floating by a stream, or to gaze at the stars and notice that one blinks blue consistently while one just seemingly an inch away, blinks orange, then red, then orange again. I can honestly say I've never pondered God's law in quite the same way. I've never giggled at the way it seems to have formed and changed over time. I've never sat in its glory. I've never felt overwhelmingly inspired by its existence. Maybe I have never even considered feeling anything but constricted by its presence, always assuming that it was there to restrict me in some way rather than providing the environment through which I could flourish. But here, in this psalm, the psalmist speaks of God's law, instruction, Torah, as if it can give us the same freedoms, the same feelings of awe and wonder, inspiration and creativity that nature does. Could it be that so often it seems we forget to look and notice and wonder at the mystery of God's law? Do nature and the law have that in common? Do we forget to play and marvel and live and work and rest within the scope of God's law? The word law that's used here really means Torah. And it's a shame that our best translation is law, because it really does mean so much more than that. It's really God's grace-filled will for us, for anyone who takes it to heart, really. The psalmist forced me to ponder this point, and in so doing, I discovered that Torah, or instruction, doesn't so much refer to a preordained set of obligations, prescriptions, and prohibitions, no matter how much my brain would really like to process it that way. Instead, it refers more to the way God is revealed in the world. It was helpful for me to discover that for Jewish people, Torah isn't just a list of rules. It's a way of life. And Deuteronomy tells us that that way of life is revealed in ways of being that express love. We are able to find those expressions of love whenever we are in right relationships with God, ourselves, others, and nature. That is Torah. The decrees and the rules that then flow from Torah exist only insofar as to help us live out Torah in our lives. Ding. The psalmist reminds us that it is God's will for us to be delighted, inspired, creative, just by being, as is the case with nature, but also in our doing, as is the case with Torah. The psalmist describes that which we are to do and the ways in which we are to live as more desirable than gold, even the best gold, sweeter than honey, sweeter even than the drippings that come off of the honeycomb. The author uses metaphors from nature, from creation itself, to express the richness, the satisfaction, the tastiness of the things we find very hard to describe. Using metaphors we have been given, metaphors we have been gifted even through creation, to help explain and to help us feel what it is to know God. Here, the psalmist testifies to the Creator's glory in nature and throughout all of history. For it is the same Creator who calls each and every one of us to live and play and rest and work in the presence of God. The psalmist sees creation, the stars, the moon, the sun, the sky, the earth, as means through which we can find our way to God, means which need no words at all. And the laws, then, that govern their rising and setting, the ways in which they provide heat in the summer and cold in the winter, the rules of nature that enable them to set the course for our living, also show us the way to God. And equally so, the law, even with its imperfect language and its reliance on words and metaphors, from the viewpoint of the psalmist, is a crucial and beautiful aspect of creation itself. The way it guides our living is likened to the most valuable resources that nature can provide us. Together, law and nature, creation and Torah, leave us in awe, cause us to wonder, are intended to have an effect on us that is good. In them together, we can begin to understand what it means to glorify God and to live and rest and play and work in God's holiness. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my Redeemer. Amen.